I want you to close your eyes for a second. Seriously, just for a moment. Imagine you are standing backstage. It's dark. The air is thick with that specific mix of dust, hairspray, and adrenaline that you only find in old theaters. You can hear the low hum of a crowd on the other side of that velvet curtain. But this isn't just any crowd. You are in the Nashville area. Goodlettsville, to be precise. This is the mothership, the beating heart of the American music industry. And you aren't just about to perform for fans who bought a ticket because they liked a song on the radio. You are about to step out in front of the literal architects of the genre you have dedicated your entire life to.
It is the classic nightmare scenario, isn't it? The imposter syndrome dream come to life. Your throat goes dry just thinking about it.
Completely. The lights are hot, the microphone feels slippery in your hand, and standing in the wings, watching you, are the ghosts of the past. Men who defined the sound for the last 50 years. And you have exactly one shot, one song, to prove that you aren't just a karaoke singer, that you aren't just a tourist in this world, but that you actually belong in the lineage.
And the stakes are compounded because the song you have to sing isn't a safe little ballad. It isn't a toe tapper that you can hide behind with a smile and a clap. It's an anthem. It's a song that requires you to go from a whisper to a full-throated roar. If you miss the note, you don't just embarrass yourself, you embarrass the legacy.
It sounds like the opening scene of a biopic, doesn't it? Like something scripted for Hollywood. But this was a very real Tuesday night for a singer named Rodney Tyson.
It was, and that night and the ripple effects of that single performance is what we are digging into today.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We have a massive stack of notes here today. We've got concert reviews, we've got deep archival biographical data on some serious musical legends, industry analysis from SGN Scoops, and we even have the transcript of the specific performance in question. Our mission today is to unpack why this single performance by Rodney Tyson and the group Steve Hess and Southern Salvation became the definitive moment that, well, that secured their place in history.
It's a fascinating case study in pressure, performance, and validation. It's about what happens when you have to prove your worth in real time.
It really is. But before we get to the music, before we break down the harmonies and the history, we have to clear the air. There is a specific word that keeps popping up in the search results and the fan forums regarding this night. It's the elephant in the room. Or maybe the golden gramophone in the room.
Right, the G word.
Exactly. If you look up this event or if you talk to the superfans, you hear phrases like Grammy-nominating performance or Grammy caliber. It's become this sort of legend attached to the night. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off immediately. Did Rodney Tyson walk off that stage in Goodlettsville with a golden gramophone?
The short answer is no. But the long answer, and this is why we do deep dives, is actually much more interesting, and it tells us a lot about how the specific music industry works. When we comb through the source material, what we see is that the Grammy Association is really a reflection of the ecosystem they were swimming in, rather than the specific hardware they took home that night.
Okay, so let's define ecosystem in this context. Because usually when people say Grammy, they mean the award show on TV.
Well, look at their label. They were with Mansion Entertainment. Now, if you aren't inside the music business, that name might just sound like a company. But Mansion is a powerhouse. They distributed T. Graham Brown's album Forever Changed, which did get a Grammy nod. So right off the bat, Steve Hess and Southern Salvation are operating in that same pool of talent and, production quality.
So it's guilt by association, but in a good way. Competence by association.
Exactly. And then you look at the people sharing the stage with them that night. You had members of the Masters v. Grammy winners from 1981. You had deep connections to the Oak Ridge Boys, massive Grammy winners. So the air in the room was thick with that level of prestige. The buzz around the performance felt like Grammy quality because everything else in the room was at that level. But, and this is the twist that I think makes this story unique, the actual awards that Steve Hess and his group secured during this era didn't come from the Recording Academy. They came from the White House.
Which, arguably, is a harder room to play than the Staples Center.
I'd say so. We're talking about the Presidential Call to Service Award. So while the internet buzzes about Grammys, the reality is they were being recognized for something that, well, that transcends music. But we'll get to the disaster relief and the medals later. First, we have to understand the arena.
Let's set the scene properly. We keep calling this the Legends Concert. Now, I've been to tourist towns. I've driven past the billboards in Las Vegas or Myrtle Beach for Legends in Concert. Is that what we're talking about here? A guy in a rhinestone jumpsuit pretending to be Elvis?
No, and I am so glad you brought that up because it's a major point of confusion for people outside the genre. The source material explicitly differentiates this. The Legends in Concert show you see in Myrtle Beach is theater. It's nostalgia recreation. You have a very talented impersonator dressed as Madonna or Celine Dion or Elvis. It's a costume party with a very high budget.
It's remember when. It's a simulation.
Precisely. It's fun, but it's fake. But the Nashville Legends program, specifically this Gospel Legends reunion, is the exact opposite. There are no impersonators. These are the actual human beings. This is a formalized celebration of status within the Southern gospel hierarchy.
So when they bill it as legends, they mean, here is the actual guy who hit the low note on the record in 1974.
Correct. This is a guild meeting. It's where the gold standard is reinforced. You don't get invited to this stage unless you are either part of the history or the sanctioned future of the music. To understand the pressure Rodney Tyson was under, you have to look at the titans on that bill.
Let's run down the list, because these aren't just random bands. These are the pillars.
It is a staggering lineup. First, you have the Stamps Quartet.
Okay, even if you don't listen to gospel, that name rings a bell. It feels foundational.
It should. You certainly know their former boss, J.D. Sumner. The man was a force of nature in the music business. He managed the Stamps, but his claim to fame, the thing that puts him in the history books, is that in 1971, Elvis Presley hired him.
The king himself.
The king himself. The Stamps were Elvis's backup group from 71 until the very end in 1977.
I read somewhere in the notes, and this blew my mind, that J.D. Sumner actually sang at Elvis's mother's funeral.
He did, and at Elvis's funeral. The sources tell us that Elvis idolized J.D. Sumner's voice when he was a teenager. He used to go to the auditorium just to hear J.D. sing the low notes. So when the Stamps step onto the stage at this Legends concert, they aren't just a band. They are a direct bridge to one of the biggest cultural icons of the 20th century.
And the Stamps are famous for that specific bass singing, right? That rumble that rattles your chest.
The lowest of the low. J.D. Sumner was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records for the lowest recorded note. It's a frequency that you almost feel more than you hear. It's below the range of a standard piano. So imagine you are a new group. You have to follow that. You have to follow a wall of sound that has literally backed up Elvis Presley in Las Vegas.
That isn't just intimidating. It's practically unfair. Who else was on the card?
You had the Imperials. Now, this is interesting because the Imperials also backed Elvis, but they represent a totally different shift in the music. They started as a traditional quartet, but they eventually morphed into the pioneers of CCM contemporary Christian music.
CCM. Let's break that acronym down for the listener who might not know the industry terms. What does that actually signify in terms of sound?
Sure. CCM is basically the radio-friendly pop rock version of religious music that exploded in the 1980s and 90s. Think Amy Grant or Michael W. Smith. The Imperials were the bridge. They took the 4-part harmony and added drums, electric guitars, and synthesizers. They made it cool. They took the suits off and put on the leather jackets, metaphorically speaking.
So you have the staunch traditionalists with the Stamps, the tuxedo crowd, and the innovators with the Imperials.
Exactly. And then you throw in groups like the Singing Americans and the Prophets, who were known for just absolute vocal athleticism. It's like the Olympics of singing. Everyone there is a gold medalist in their specific event.
It really feels like the Elvis connection is the invisible thread tying all these older groups together.
It looms over the entire circuit. The source material mentions how the ghost of Elvis seems to hover over these events. It adds this layer of pop culture weight. You aren't just singing church songs, you're singing in a lineage that touched the king of rock and roll. It elevates the event from a church service to a piece of American history.
And into this arena steps Rodney Tyson.
Into this arena steps Rodney Tyson.
Let's look at the contenders here. Steve Hess and Southern Salvation. Who are these guys? Are they fresh out of the garage?
Far from it. At the center, you have Steve Hess. He's the founder. He sings baritone. And if we are talking about lineage, his is royalty. He is the nephew of Jake Hess.
Jake Hess. I know I've heard that name, but remind me of the significance.
Jake Hess is on the Mount Rushmore of Southern gospel. He was the lead singer for the Statesman Quartet, and he founded the Imperials. He was arguably the most influential stylist in the history of the genre. Elvis, again, the Elvis connection. Elvis said Jake Hess was his favorite singer.
So Steve Hess is walking around wearing a backpack filled with that legacy. Every time he opens his mouth, people are comparing him to his uncle.
No pressure, Steve. Just your Uncle Jake, the guy who basically invented the style. It's an immense burden of expectation.
Right, so who is he flanking himself with?
At this pivotal time, we're looking around 2012, the group was a trio. You had Steve on baritone, Chad Riley on tenor, and then the new guy, Rodney Tyson, on lead.
I want to pause on the word trio, because most of the groups we just mentioned, the Stamps, the Imperials, the Cathedrals, those are quartets, 4 guys.
That is a crucial observation. The Southern gospel sound is traditionally built on 4 parts: tenor, the high guy; lead, the melody; baritone, the blender; and bass, the anger. It is a full closed chord. When you strip that down to a trio, you are technically losing a limb.
You usually lose the bass, right?
Usually, yes, and that creates a massive sonic problem. In a quartet, you have a floor, that low bass note, and a ceiling, the tenor. In a trio, you have to constantly shift the harmony to trick the ear into thinking the sound is fuller than it is.
Smoke and mirrors.
More like hard labor. Everyone has to work significantly harder. The baritone has to sing lower than usual to cover the bottom end. The tenor has to sing with more texture. And the lead singer, there's nowhere to hide. If a lead singer in a quartet takes a breath, the other 3 cover him. In a trio, if the lead drops out, the song falls apart. It is exposed.
So they are already fighting an uphill battle. They are a trio in a quartet's world. They're touring this project called Revived, and they decide to perform a song called If You Knew Him.
Which brings us to the definitive moment.
Why this song
Yeah,
is If You Knew Him, just a catchy tune. Is it toe tapper?
not at all. This is what the industry calls high-stakes repertoire. It's a classic anthem. It's been recorded by the heavy hitters like the Perrys or the McComies. It is a slow-burn ballad that demands 2 things: absolute technical control and deep emotional resonance.
It's a diva song.
In the best sense of the word, yes. It requires a singer who can command the room. You can't sing the song casually while checking your watch.
I was looking at the transcript of the performance, and the lyrics are, well, they're aggressive. It's not just Jesus loves me. It's an argument.
It's apologetic set to music. The song is a narrative journey through comparative religion, and that is a risky thing to do on stage if you don't sell it with total conviction.
Let's look at the specific lines, because they are bold.
The transcript picks it up right at the first verse. The singer describes a journey. I walked by the tomb of B, saw his bones. The transcript cuts off the full name, but in the standard lyric, that's referring to Buddha. Then it continues. Traveled on to see Muhammad, still wrapped up in his grave clothes.
So it is explicitly listing other major religious figures and saying they are dead.
Exactly. It is setting up a stark contrast. It's a very common trope in Southern gospel, the exclusive claim of Christianity. But then the pivot happens in the chorus. Then I journey too. The transcript mentions Ghana, though usually the lyric refers to Golgotha, likely a mishearing in the transcription or an ad-lib. But the point remains, the precious lamb, he was no longer in that grave.
And the climax.
The climax is the challenge to the listener. If you knew life and glory, you would know that he's alive.
That is a massive thing to sing to a room full of people. You can't half-heartedly sing that. You can't mumble those lines.
No, you have to believe it, or the audience, especially a sophisticated Legends audience, will smell the fake immediately. This audience has heard 50 years of preachers and singers. They know when someone is just hitting notes versus when someone is testifying.
Testifying, that's a specific word in this culture.
It is. It implies that the singer is a witness to the truth of the lyric, not just a performer of the melody. And this is where Rodney Tyson comes in. The sources describe his performance as having a testimonial quality.
How did he pull it off musically? We talked about the trio mechanics.
Well, picture the soundstage. You have Chad Riley, the tenor. The source notes call him the vocal anchor for the high frequencies. He has to provide the shimmer, that cutting high sound that makes the chord ring in a large room. Then you have Steve Hess on baritone providing the body, the warmth underneath.
And Rodney is in the driver's seat.
Rodney has to drive the bus. The sources say he anchored the harmony. That's a powerful phrase for a lead singer. It means he didn't just float on top, he dug in. His vocal presence allowed a 3-man group to stand next to the massive wall of sound that the Stamps produced and not sound small.
And that's the key, right? If you follow J.D. Sumner and the Stamps and you sound thin or weak, you're done. You're the opening act that everyone forgets by the time they get to the parking lot.
Exactly. But because of Tyson's delivery, that intensity we talked about, the one that people keep calling Grammy caliber, they achieved parity. They bridged the gap. They showed that they respected the history, the style, the harmony, the suit and tie presentation, but they were bringing a modern, revived energy to it.
So the crowd goes wild. The industry takes notice. But here is where the story takes a turn that I really love. We talked about validation. And usually in music, validation means a trophy case full of Grammys or Doves.
Right.
But for Steve Hess and Southern Salvation, the validation came from a completely different direction.
This is, to me, the most fascinating part of their profile. While we were debating the Grammy question earlier, the sources point us to something arguably more tangible in terms of human impact: the Presidential Service Awards.
The Call to Service Award from the Office of the President of the United States. That is not a small thing. You don't get that for hitting a high C.
No, and you don't get that for having a good publicist. You get that for verified hours of volunteer service. They also received the Lifetime Achievement Award for volunteerism.
What do they actually do? Because musicians are famous for charity. It is really just a photo op, holding a giant check for 10 minutes.
This was boots on the ground. The sources detail extensive work organizing concerts specifically to benefit storm victims. We are talking about relief efforts for hurricanes in Florida and Louisiana, tornado victims in Alabama and Missouri.
So they were using the platform they built, the concerts, the touring bus, the fan base, to funnel resources to people who had lost everything.
Exactly, and this connects back to Steve Hess's philosophy. There is a quote in the source material where he discusses their mandate. He says they feel called to minister the gospel, yes, but they feel an even stronger mandate to serve the least of these.
It changes how you hear the music, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It recontextualizes the performance entirely.
When Rodney Tyson stands on that stage and sings about life and glory, about the precious lamb, it's not just show business. You know that these guys have been on the ground in disaster zones. They've seen the destruction. It gives the performance a gravity that you can't fake with lights and smoke.
That's the servant heart aspect. And I think the Legends audience, who are often older, who have seen it all, they respond to that authenticity. They know the difference between a performer and a minister. And SHSS proved they were both.
But let's play devil's advocate. You can be a saint, but if your music is bad, you won't get on the radio. Did the industry, the actual business side, care about the good deeds?
They did, because the quality of the product backed it up. You can't sustain a career on good deeds alone. You need radio play. And the sources confirm they had that. They were featured on The Gospel Greats with Paul Heil.
And for those who don't know, explain who Paul Heil was in this world.
Paul Heil was the gatekeeper. The Gospel Greats was the premier syndicated radio show for decades. If Paul Heil played your record, you were legitimate. It was heard on over 200 stations nationwide and on Sirius XM. Getting a spin on that show is like getting a glowing review in the New York Times for a Broadway show. It signals to every promoter in the country that you are worth booking.
And they had nominations too.
Yes, the Diamond Awards. These are fan-voted and industry-voted awards presented by SGN Scoops, that's the Southern Gospel News Scoops, a major digital publication. They were nominated for Favorite Trio and Song of the Year. These are the accolades that keep the bus on the road.
And eventually, this trajectory led them to a residency at the Ark Encounter,
which is a massive venue in Kentucky. It's a life-size replica of Noah's Ark, performing hundreds of concerts annually there. That is a grueling schedule, singing multiple times a day. But it shows that they built a sustainable, professional enterprise. And it all traces back to establishing that credibility at events like the Legends concert.
I want to zoom out a bit. We've looked at the group, the song, the awards, but let's look at the bigger picture. Segment 5 of our outline calls this the cultural ecosystem of Southern gospel.
It is a unique ecosystem. I don't think there is another genre of music quite like it in America.
We've been talking about this Legends concert, which sounds very formal, very tuxedo, very preservation of history. But then I see a note here about a youth rally in Missouri.
This is the contrast that defines the group. The sources mention that Steve Hess and Southern Salvation were the only Southern gospel artist invited to share the stage with rock and CCM bands at a youth rally for 6,000 teenagers.
That is a terrifying gig. You are the guys in suits singing 4-part or 3-part harmony, and you are playing to 6,000 kids who probably listen to hip-hop or modern worship.
It is a terrifying gig if you aren't confident in your product. If you go out there and try to pander, if you try to act younger than you are, the kids will eat you alive. Teenagers have the best radar for inauthenticity on the planet.
Did they try to be cool?
No. The source says they delivered an uncompromising message about the cross, regardless of the venue. They didn't try to wear skinny jeans. They didn't try to add a rap verse. They went out and did what they do. High-quality harmony, clear message.
And it worked.
Apparently so. It shows that the Legends concept isn't just about nostalgia for old people. It's about a musical form that actually translates if it's done with excellence.
It's interesting to think about the strategy there. The Legends concerts validate you with the grandparents,
Mm.
the people who buy the CDs and fund the ministry. But the youth rallies are where you plant the seeds for the future.
Exactly. And think about the Legends concept itself. It uses nostalgia, the Elvis connection, the classic songs as a vehicle. It gets people in the door. Come see J.D. Sumner's group. But once they are in the door, groups like SHSS use that platform for active ministry and charitable work. It's a strategic ecosystem. The past fuels the present.
It's not just a museum, it's an engine.
That's a great way to put it. It takes the energy of what came before and converts it into kinetic energy for what is happening now.
So as we wrap this up, let's go back to Rodney Tyson. We started with him standing on that stage, facing the pressure, sweat on his brow. What is the verdict?
The verdict is that he delivered. His performance of If You Knew Him was the anchor. It allowed a trio to hold its own against the legendary quartets. It proved that Steve Hess made the right choice in hiring him during that transition in 2012.
And the Grammy thing, the headline we started with.
The Grammy confusion is actually a compliment
So
because it means people heard the quality. They saw the company the group was keeping, the stamps, the Oaks, the Mansion Entertainment label, and they assumed, well, surely this is Grammy stuff. It was a mistake made out of respect. The fact that the actual award was a Presidential Service Award doesn't diminish the music. It actually adds a layer of character that a Grammy can't.
that's a great point. You can win a Grammy for a great vocal performance, but you win a Presidential Call to Service Award for a great heart.
And in the world of gospel music, the heart is supposed to be the point.
So what does this all mean for us? Why should the listener care about a concert that happened years ago in Goodlettsville?
I think it matters because it shows us how tradition works. In an industry that is obsessed with the new sounds, new stars, new trends, Southern gospel thrives by making the new artists prove they can carry the weight of the old.
You have to earn your stripes.
You do. Rodney Tyson had to prove he was strong enough to stand next to the stamps. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about proving you were strong enough to roll it.
Proving you are strong enough to roll the wheel. I like that.
And for Steve Hess and Southern Salvation, rolling that wheel meant singing the anthems, feeding the storm victims, and showing up, whether it was for 6,000 screaming teenagers or a room full of legends who knew Elvis.
And that, my friends, is a legacy worth diving into. Here is a thought to leave you with. We talked about the ghosts of the past looming over the stage. In most music, think rock and roll or punk, you are trying to kill your idols. You want to destroy the past to build the future. In this genre, you are trying to become them. Does that stifle creativity, or does it ensure that excellence never dies? Something to chew on.
That's the big question.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.